Well, today we have a very special guest, a good friend of ours, the world-renowned,
Shit, world renowned
the,
now.
the infamous,
It's our world. It's our world.
infamous, notorious. And before I tell you his name, I'm gonna give you his accolades. He's a he's an artist.
You could probably guess.
He's an artist. He's a well-known fabricator, poet, contrarian, philosopher.
Not everybody knows.
Matthew Conklin,
Boom.
Thanks. Bro.
aka Big Sexy.
That's right. I kind of like that better. I always feel funny saying that, or when people ask me about it, right? And I'm always like, I didn't do that to
Your
myself.
email still says it.
Dude, I know. And then what's weird now is that all proliferated at Torchy's, right? And
Yeah.
since there's been so much change and stuff going on over there, I don't really know anybody anymore.
Yeah.
But we're still doing work with them, right? So whenever somebody gets an email from me or I'm copied on an email, it still shows Big Sexy in there. And like, I get people going like, who is this? Is this like a real thing? Is it a joke? And it's, I think, forever in their like email system is Big Sexy.
Yeah, I can't even remember the genesis of that, but it.
Dude, I know you kept sending me emails that were for other Matthews. And one day I was finally like, dude, you got to do something about this because I was just getting them left and right. And you changed my name to Big Sexy on your contact.
That's right.
And then it ended up just getting in the system. And that's what it shows. Like, it doesn't show my name. It doesn't show anything.
Yeah, it just
like
says Big Sexy.
It just says Big Sexy. And
Yeah.
like, I'll get an email from, the C-suite and it says like all these important people and like Big Sexy on it, right? And I'm like,
That's what I was about to say. One of our bigger projects that we all did together. The first email that I saw was Big Sexy. It's like, who is this?
it's a good icebreaker, I guess, right? I have to explain it and tell people I didn't give it to myself.
People would ask about that though, on projects. They're like, "Oh, is Big Sexy going to show up?" Especially over at Torchy's, they were like,
Yeah.
like these new managers or people out on the field that, they would see that in an email thread and they're like, "Man, is Big Sexy coming out here?" Like, don't worry,
Yeah, people are curious.
don't worry.
They're always probably disappointed.
Yeah,
No, man, you
Well,
roll with
it
that.
is
Well, that's
what-
the best thing about it, right? About you is you just own it, and there's this comfortability about it. Ask me, I'm Big Sexy.
I'm going to use it too. I think, I've been toying
That's
with
gonna be your
blacksmith
brand.
stuff and I want to start a product line of some sort eventually.
T-shirt brand,
I'm going to call it Big
underoos.
Sexy
Yeah.
Supply Company.
make sure I get my 5% of that.
I thought it was only 2.5.
That's the other thing.
Those royalties are creeping up there, aren't they?
Well, what area are we going to dive into today? I'll tell you. It's kind of, here's what I wanted to start off.
Yeah.
So, we did this last a couple of days ago, and when we started talking about creativity, because this is a world I know nothing about. Right, I'm a spreadsheet guy.
That's not true.
Well,
I'd say you have a good eye.
I can
Yeah,
recognize.
That's right.
I
That's
can recognize. I can't live in the world, but the question came up, and I was interested in Mark's answer, but I'm going to ask you now too, because you were a former architect, design. You still live in that world too. How do you know when, from a creative standpoint, you're successful?
Dude, that's a loaded question. Are you ever really successful? I don't think I've ever done anything. I get excited at the onset, at the idea or the concept, and then once you flesh it out and then it's done, all I see is the little crap that I'm like, shit, I should have done that different.
Yeah.
I could have done that better, right? And it's hard. But I think that also is what kind of keeps you going, right? Because then if you're just content with everything that you crank out, then what's the point, But I never like anything that we do.
Are you ever happy with it in the middle, like of the process?
I'm happy with the process, right? Again, I think it's the initial challenge, right, that is fun. It's the problem solving aspect of it that
Yeah.
kind of like gets my juices flowing. And once it's mostly figured out, then to some degree, right, I kind of lose interest a little bit, right? I think, my experience in the architecture world obviously was brief, right? So I went to school and I worked at a firm for a couple of years, and I was involved with some pretty cool projects, but it just never really. I don't know. I didn't like. I did a couple of design team projects, and then I did a couple of projects where we took it from inception all the way through CDs, right? And by the time we were done with the CDs, I was just like, God, I don't even want to look at it anymore,
Yeah.
And that's the hard part. And that's why I got more into like the building stuff, because I thought, well, if we can like design it, but I don't actually see it come to fruition, right? I wanted to see the finished product, and that's more fun, at least for me, the way I'm wired, right? That does it for me more than anything else.
Is it the gratification is sooner or more evident about what you make? Because it's the architectural project could take years.
Yeah.
It's a slow moving animal, but there's still the same amount of problem solving, collaboration, hopefully. But the gratification is hard, right? That's, you got to wait for a while, or you got to find it in little instances.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the little instances, right? And I think for me, like, I like the initial idea, figuring it out on paper and SketchUp or whatever that is. And then I like when, you know, the truck shows up with a gigantic load of metal and it's just a bunch of sticks of stuff, right? And, you know, a couple days later, all of a sudden, like, we got this crazy thing on the floor in the shop, right? And it looks like something, and like, that's fun to me.
Yeah.
You know, like when maybe I've been out of the shop and I walk in and they've been putting something together that we've been working on, and all of a sudden this like gigantic thing's on the floor. I'm like, holy shit, you know, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You know, like, that's what I like about it. I like the more hands-on
Yeah.
aspect of it. But the creative process is always hard, right? And it just, sometimes it's easy, right? I feel like sometimes you just get that little spark and then you can just like get it out, right? And it just sort of just, it's a dump and then it's over. And then sometimes you sort of like sit and battle for that just little, you know, I'm like a horrible procrastinator, right? I don't know about, you're probably not. You might be, I don't know. But I just, this part of,
that's kind of a common thing in the design world. And again, this is me, you know, looking from the outside. But I don't know if that's just part of the creative process or not.
I don't know if it's procrastination. It is procrastination if you're looking at it from the outside. But what I believe now is I need time to marinate. I call it
Yes.
marination.
yeah.
I need time to think about it. I'm noodling. I'm thinking. I'm not doing anything else other than kind of thinking through the process.
Yeah. Where does that? So here's the deal. When again, an outsider, because I don't have the creative gene, right? I can
It's not
look,
true.
well,
Not
listen,
true. It's just not
I-
it's a different type of creative gene.
I can look at something, and I had a lot of experience with this at Torchy's. I can look at something and go, okay, that makes sense. You know, that color makes sense and all that. But I can't imagine how, like, where do those ideas come from? Like, where does that come from? Like, and I want to hear both of you kind of answer this, right? Because I'm interested in your perspectives. But like, when you're brought a project, okay, we're gonna design this, you know, building or this restaurant, and obviously there's parameters of like, well, it needs to be this size. There's a functionality component of it, but then you're like, go, like, what happens then? Where is it like this thing start? You know, again, I can't imagine what that is, because I can't do that. I can't put something together and make it look cohesive. So like, how does that look?
I think it comes from all different arenas, right? Sometimes it doesn't come, and iteration, the amount of iterations, eventually it will happen, and you just have to continuously look for it. But I think there's this innate interest of what you're after. Maybe you can define it, maybe you can't. But the iteration, the amount of iteration is key, and editing is key. And once you find something, whatever it is on a floor plan or an image or detail or materiality, then I think that one little thing could offer, an avenue towards the thing that you're after.
How much with the pitch? Because I definitely want to talk about that a little bit, right? Since we got Matt here, but how different did the pitch end up being from your original?
Man, it was spot on.
Yeah.
Like it was.
He was pretty close to
It
the
was
original
damn
concepts
close.
that I saw.
Yeah.
It didn't change a lot.
I can resend that to you guys, but I often will send those. We call them feasibility studies. So you're just kind of early onset site planning, imagery. You know, if you're doing precedented images, or you're doing master planning, and then you stack the boxes, and then you create a rendering.
Yeah.
Right. But it's real brief. Like you got to do it real quick. And it's a gut reaction, although, you know, that gut reaction is built on history.
Yeah.
But I often send that out and say, this was, you know, based on the team that we had, we were allowed to make the original intent happen, you know, in a reality condition. And it was close. Not often, But that, I always call that project a unicorn
Yeah.
because very, very a lot of times it gets altered by a number of reasons. It could be code, it could be budget, it could be the team changes, it could be program changes. But that one was based on an experience that we all kind of understood and we fought for, and the owners had buy-in, the team had buy-in. Like we all had buy-in early on, and we all knew kind of generally what that vision was going to be. And when you have that, it's pretty, it's like, man, the alignment is there. Like unless we were to put a bomb in it, we were set up for a success, I think.
Yeah.
So
that's definitely one that I think the first time I came to your office and looked at that project, I was like, oh, okay, this is good.
Yeah.
Like, this will be fun. It's that initial like, oh shit, this is what's, there's possibility here, and it's like, oh, okay, this will be a great project. And then I know for me anyway, then you kind of get into the details and you get into the actual like logistics and execution of what has to happen.
Yeah.
And then for me, it's like, then I'm kind of head down, like how are we going to, then it becomes a little bit unpleasant, to be honest.
Yeah.
And then
it's grind at that point, right?
Yeah.
Trying to make sure that you can figure it all out.
Yeah.
And then inevitably with every project, it's a race to the end.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Then I, it's a matter of, okay, we don't want to compromise. Like how, right? How can we get to the end now and not compromise too much? And then the payoff for me comes months later when I'm able to go back. 'Cause we went by and looked at that project, 2 or 3 months ago.
Dude, I haven't been since it opened.
Dude, you got to go back.
Go, man.
Because
I
now
was there,
it's
I was there every day for
especially during
months,
game
right?
day.
And I was like, just get me out of here. But I want to go now for sure.
well, going back and removing all the memories of like, oh, that's fucked up. Oh, that this happened over here that we fixed, but we didn't fix it the way we wanted to, or all the skeletons are removed and cleared out, and you can sit there and appreciate it for what it is, and you're like, oh shit, this is pretty significant, man. This is good. But I gotta have some distance for me to appreciate it.
Yeah.
Because
I didn't go back.
Forget all the.
I didn't go back for a while.
Yeah.
But backing up a little bit, like that's a again, I'll call it a unicorn because that can't happen without the creative brains. It's not us. Like, it's not one person that imagines and creates. Like, that process was incredibly intense, but important to acknowledge, because you could have you could have a builder, you could have a welder, which was a key component to the whole process, because the whole thing's made of steel. You could have someone at the table that doesn't completely understand the vision and will allow themselves to dig in creatively and offer feedback. If we didn't have you guys, then all we're looking at is a black and white set of drawings, right? With no other problem solving skills. They just want to be told, hey, it's not in the detail. I don't know what to do. It's not in the detail. I don't know what to do. Can you imagine?
Well, see, and I'm the opposite, right?
You're the
Because
opposite.
when I
That's
look at
why
a
it
set of
worked.
drawings, like, I don't want to be dictated
Right.
everything. I want to be like, I want the concept. What do we want it to look like? Okay, let me figure out how I would want it.
And that's what
Which
we
is
need.
not always great, right? But
Well-
it was the perfect situation, right? Because we all worked together and ran with all the details on it. But for me, and having a background in architecture, right, I feel like in those situations, right, it gives us a leg up because we can take it and be like, oh, well, we get the intent. Okay, so how are we going to make it to get the intent across? Like, I
Right.
don't want to be spoon fed anything,
Yeah.
because then I check out, right? Like I have to have some sort of like
Yeah.
skin in the game intellectually,
Yeah.
or I'm just like, okay, I don't,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which is not good lots of times also, because there are
Well-
situations where somebody's very like, this is exactly what I want. This is exactly how I want it. And I'm like, well, we could do that.
But it may be good, right? Because then as a business owner, you search for those projects and you can pinpoint those opportunities that will make you successful.
Yeah.
For us, that's what I want. Whether or not we see eye to eye in a particular detail or we're imagining, exactly the same thing, to have that conversation, then both of us buying in about this thing that we want to make, that's what we need. That's what you get. The after effect is the pitch. And I'll be the first one to say we don't know everything. We need help, right? That's a collaboration, and that's what we're after. So I think so kind of aligning yourselves with this team is incredibly important, and really what I try to do.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm sitting here.
And it was fun, right? It makes it fun.
Yeah.
Just having like those little design meetings where we were working through details
Passing
and railing
models.
and just,
Yeah.
and stuff like that, right? And that's what I enjoyed about architecture school was like making models, right? Like that was my favorite thing. And I actually did that for a little while when I got out, when I quit working at HKS.
Yeah.
I just did models for a couple of years, right? It's fun. Yeah. Just the pace.
Sure it wasn't the glue?
It might have been the glue. A little bit. It was the laser, like the fumes from the laser cutter and the glue and the late nights. I just really I work really well in intense spurts.
Yeah.
Which I've struggled with a lot, right? Because an 8-hour day doesn't do it for me, right? Like if I'm just going to go in and do a 9 to 5 and try to get something done, I feel like I didn't do anything, right? I would rather not work on Monday and work 16 hours on Tuesday.
Sure.
And that's not good, right? It's good in crunch time whenever you have to produce a lot. But then I get in these veins where I'm just in go mode and I want to work, 14 days in a row and don't sleep. And that's bad, right? I've really had to struggle with that a lot. Yeah. But same, I think that's sort of architectural culture, maybe they ingrain that in you in school. Yeah. It's like studio and it's, okay, you have so many hours to do this and you're up there all night making stuff. And it's just sort of it's fun though. Mm-hmm. It's fun in the beginning. And then it's not fun when you're nearing the end and you're exhausted. And then after you've slept for 2 or 3 days, then I appreciate it.
Yeah. After. Yeah, it is draining. That we get into the educational, that background and what they teach us. That's an interesting topic, but what it does allow you is it teaches you problem solving. The education of architecture, even if you don't go into architecture, it's a valuable education, right? You could move anywhere because you know how to problem solve.
How so? What does that look like from a architecture standpoint when you're talking about problem solving?
Well, you're given a problem that you have no idea how to resolve. And you're giving a program and a kit of parts, meaning you have sketch paper and you have models and you kind of know how to draw. But you also have to understand how to sell, right? Mm-hmm. You come up with an idea, and this is sometimes these projects are huge, like design an arena. Mm-hmm. Fuck, that a student has. You barely even know how to put a box together. And so you're challenged to think about a lot of different things on the surface. But on the surface, it has to be believable whenever you put it on paper and whenever you talk about it. Mm-hmm. And if it's not, then you get challenged in a way that's very uncomfortable. Yeah. So that uncomfortableness about how your idea gets challenged pushes you in a problem-solving arena that is quite different from any other education that I know of. And so, you could be challenged on subjective things that are just have no relevant place in your imagination. Mm-hmm. But you have to come up with a reason in the moment as to why you did that thing. And I think, over the course of 5 years of that education, which is pretty intense, kids are staying up all night long. They don't sleep, and that's not good to teach our young people, because that's not the way that you have work-life balance. But that intensity is ingrained, and that work ethic is ingrained in a way that I don't know of any other realm of education that pushes you like that.
Yeah. The same. I always felt it was like a weeding out process, right?
Absolutely.
They push you to that because they want to see who's willing to do that or who's crazy enough to do that. Yeah. And that's, that's who they want in their offices cranking stuff out, But I agree, right? And it's all about the parameters, like going back to just the creativity part of it or the design part of it. For me, right, if you have the right set of parameters, almost when it's too loose, it's impossible. Right? If you just came to me and was like, I want you to design me a house. Well, without any baseline parameters,
yeah.
I mean, shit, that could be anything.
Mm-hmm.
And that happens a lot, right? You get people that call and they're like, well, I just want this thing, but I don't really know. And I'm like, well, I need something.
Yeah.
Right? You just need a little spark, just that little lane. And then once you get in there and you get all the parts and pieces, and then you just get that one idea and it just like flows out. The worst is when you do like 10 iterations and then you hate them all. Then maybe like on the 10th, there's like one little thing that you like, and then you take that and can turn that into something, right? And
What's the right mix of parameters and guidance that you're given versus, is there too much, right? Because I mean, I would, again, looking from the outside, you've got some of your personality, some of your energy, whatever you want to call it, right? Some of you is in that design, and it's got to be, right? Because that's why people they come and talk to Mark Odom, because they want a piece of you.
Yeah.
Same thing with you when they come, But then again, I can imagine there's somebody wants to be involved too much, where it's starting to really affect your ability to put, right. So how does that?
That'll hinder the process, right?
Yeah.
If you're too heavy-handed, if you're a micromanager,
Yeah.
and you're trying to overstep your arena or your bounds, it's going to hurt the process.
Yeah.
100%.
And so we do look for those people all around, owners, consultants, builder, everybody around that sits around the table. You have to deliver a healthy opinion, but you have to also know where your opinion should stop, or someone else, or give someone else the arena to if they have a better idea or a better solution.
I think that's where like being able to sell things comes in a little bit, right? Because you could go in there and be like, I know you wanted A, B, and C, but this is better, right? Like you can take your own input and be like, I know this is what you wanted, but I think this little skew makes it better, and here's why. And, if you're a good salesman, you can sell that, right? And that's 90% of all of it, right? Is just convincing whoever that your idea is good.
Yeah.
Whether it's not, or, that's all subjective, right? At the end of the day, you could think it's the best idea ever and 10 people would hate it, right? But
is that okay?
It's okay, right? It's hard. I think, and I don't know about you, Mark, but like, I'm sensitive, right? I'm really only sensitive when it comes to like my creativity and my ideas. Like if I have something that I really like, and I, pitch it to anybody and they're like, yeah, but this, and I immediately get defensive, This is my base reaction, is to to defend my idea for a minute. But then you can kind of look at it, and it's good to get those like, yeah, it would be better if I did that.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's some quote, I don't know who it's from, Andy Warhol or somebody, but like a good artist, half the people hate it.
Yeah.
So, half the people love it, half the people hate it. And that's, again, there's some quote that I don't know, I can't remember, but you want to be somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. Well, whether they love it or hate it, you have to not give a shit.
Yeah.
Or else then you're moved by ulterior motives that are not beneficial to you and your creativity. So you do want, we're in a service industry. People have to gravitate to whatever we do so we can find some sort of success in that arena, or else we're not in their arena, right? But but you do have to move at your own beat, right? Or else you don't have a beat.
Yeah.
And but the other thing too is you have to remove as much as you can the ego, or else process can't happen outside of your realm, right? And that's what you want. That's what this round table is about, is whoever's got the better idea, and there could be heated debates. That's what you want. But you have to know in that heated debate you lose or you win. You have to know what that threshold is, or else it's not going to progress. And we try to teach that in the office all the time. And I have to suck it up sometimes. It's pretty cool. We have some young designers or interns, and there's a few moments where, like recently, where they're like, I don't know, Mark. That's not a very good idea. I'm like, all right.
And maybe the
Shall we?
younger,
Let's see
younger
it,
ones,
man.
right? They're less encumbered so far, right? They're still more, I don't want to say imaginative,
Oh, yeah,
right?
for
But
sure.
they haven't been beaten down by some of the
Yeah.
nuance that goes in with
Right.
stuff. You know, you put all that effort and then you end up gutting half of it because it's too expensive or
Yeah.
whatever. Like, I don't think that factors in to the younger, like right out of school
No,
kids.
that's right.
And they want to go for it, right? Which is good, but you know, at a certain point, you're going to get that reality check. Like, oh no, nobody's going to pay for that, or you can't physically build that, right? Like I see that a lot. You know, we'll get sets of stuff, and like it's physically impossible to put things together the way they're shown. You know, and
Yeah.
I always thought that it'd be so good if part of architectural education was like a hands-on requirement,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, heck
Everybody
yeah.
should have to do like
Yeah.
2 semesters, like slinging studs or doing something where you physically are a part of like
Sure.
an assembly.
Yeah, we were talking about that.
I always
that's-
say that's where the education should start. They come
Yeah.
out of school, they go into construction, and then you pass them on to architecture.
Yeah.
I think so too.
Well, Jeremy, for you, knowing that okay, there's a creative mind that's sometimes hard to deal with and hard to battle. How do you work through some of what we deliver? Like maybe we are procrastinators. Maybe our drawings aren't the best.
Yeah.
Maybe we're our our imagination is too big to where you're thinking, man, that's fucking expensive,
Yeah.
and we can't do it. Like, how do you manage
Yeah,
that?
great question. I mean, I'll tell you this, that I going back to the Torchies experience, which the three of us were involved in that a little bit. You know, my probably biggest education was being in a position to work with designers and creatives in that process. Cause we at Torchies, we kind of managed the whole, we were part of the whole thing, right? It was a real integrative approach of, bringing people in, designing, and then building it as well. And so, previous to that, my experience was just as a contractor, where we were given a set of plans, and, that's early on when there was a lot of, an adversarial relationship between, the contractor and the designer. And a lot of it is, contractors are constantly, as soon as you get going, you're constantly trying to cover your ass, and you're like, and you're almost incentivized to point back at the design and say, well, that's not right. That can't happen. It's like, I can't build it that way because it can't be done. Right. Yeah. But going through that education of like working with design, there's a level of appreciation of like, oh, okay, well, it's important to try to compromise. It's important to try to figure out how can we realize this vision.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a lot of different ways to go about doing things, not only from a fabrication standpoint, but from a system standpoint, when you're putting things together, to try to honor like, okay, well, that's what is meant. Right. And this is what the vision for this project is, or this detail or this condition. So, the best way I can answer that question is just having been on the other side of it, of like, okay, well, we definitely want to try to get this design, this condition, this detail because of what it means to the project. So let's get creative from our side, from an execution standpoint, to make that happen. But it's it's a balance too, right? I mean, I think it's a balance of thinking both, okay, I've got a contract. I've got to try to deliver certain results on a project, right? There's time, there's budget, there's quality, right? And at the same time, if we can help honor what the design intent is, we want to do that too, because that goes back to where I think that for us, that's the fourth metric of experience.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That impacts our brand from a
Yeah.
contractor standpoint.
Well, that's when I think when you say I'm not the creative one, that's where I think you're wrong, right? Because you get a set of plans early, and you have to understand the intent, and you have to imagine how the intent is achieved, right? And that takes careful editing, right? You're a creative editor, and really that's what my role is now as well. But if we can't get in, and a lot of times you get a black and white set of drawings, which is kind of bullshit these days.
Yeah.
We have models and we have all this, we have VR, that we could put
Yeah.
on a headset and we could walk through. Like there's all kinds of ways for us to help you imagine what the intent is.
Yeah.
But that's the intent, right? And drawings are only so good because of the nature of the process. But you have to dig in and you have to imagine, both of you have to imagine, how can I make this better? How can I make this work?
Yeah.
I've got schedule, I've got budget, I've got 50 different people that have to make this happen. How do I do it?
Well, I think that's when it goes back to why, collaboration is really important. Again, from a contractor standpoint, we've got some projects where there's no collaboration. We're given a set of plans.
Right.
We're bidding competitively, right? So we've got other, we're competing for the work. And so at that point, the dynamic is I'm going to bid exactly what this plan says.
Yeah.
Because I want to get the work. And I know that every other contractor is doing the same. Yeah. So the arrangement, the dynamic's different versus what we've always been talking about with a real collaborative approach is, when we're able to get involved in the design phase from a contractor standpoint, and even better when you've got a fabricator involved in the design phase. Now the conversation is different, right? Now we're all on the same side of the table. We're all moving in the right direction. We can dig in and say, okay, well, the way you drew this, there might be a better way to get to achieve that intent, but we can build it in a different way. That'll save money. Maybe it goes faster, or we can actually make it look like that.
Yeah,
versus
you could be it from the get-go.
Yeah.
And still get the same design intent across, but maybe do it
differently,
considerably different or cheaper. But,
right.
At the end of the day, as long as it still looks good and it's what either the designer or the client wants, then great. That's so much easier at the onset to identify like where those problems are going to be or what the hard parts are going to be, before you get into it. And then you're like, well, shit, we're already down the road. How are we going to change direction and still keep it going,
Well, I think there's buy-in to the overall vision as well, which I think is really important.
You said it the other day, it's finding those people. It's just not staff that give a shit.
Yeah.
Right. So you're not going to do your best work if you're not challenged in a particular way that allows you creative forethought, right?
Sure.
Or that conversation that's appealing, right? And that's what we want.
Yeah.
Because you give a shit that at the end of it, it carries your name and it looks in a particular way that you're happy or
right.
you feel some sort of joy about what you made.
Yeah.
And you too. And if we you can spin this in terms of how this industry was traditionally formed, which I think is broken. Right. Architect goes, delivers a black and white set of plans, dishes it out to 5 different builders and expected to budget it with limited questions, limited history about the conversation, and then expected to deliver it on time with the same intent. Like that shit just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And we all are still involved in some of those projects, which is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I think what we will eventually do is change that process, at least in our sphere.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's where we find joy, or that's where I find joy.
Yeah.
So
that's an interesting thought. It's how do you get into more positive relationships? How do you get into more positive scenarios where you're able to work together and have more projects that are fun? For what we do, like we were talking about last time, we're problem solvers, right? We're out looking for problems, but we're doing that inside of this really adversarial relationship. Most projects get to where there's conflict, there's disagreements, we're trying to motivate somebody to do something. And then there's the overall pressure of let's get it done on time, let's get it, which all that's important, right? And I realize that that's the world we live in, right? It's deadlines, it's budgets, it's quality. But you search out more opportunities, kind of like the pitch. And again, the pitch, we had deadlines and we had, budgets and all that kind of stuff. But it was with a different group of people that was pretty enjoyable comparatively.
Yeah.
Versus some of these other projects we get
Yeah.
into when it's just a kick in the nuts every day.
Yeah.
Every day you wake up, you're like, you know what, this is gonna fucking suck today.
Yeah.
So let's push through, and but generally that's kind of what construction is.
Yeah.
It's more of the kick in the nuts than it is
Yeah.
like everybody's kind of like rolling together and
That's inevitable. Unfortunately, that's the way it was built. That's the way the industry built.
yeah.
Everybody's
And
pitted
as
against each other
subtle
from the start.
as it is, or as it's like this obvious thing, but it's a machine that has a history of being the way that it is for 100 years, and to change that rhythm is difficult.
Yeah.
Like it's a slow moving. It's a slow moving thing.
When we've talked about before, like, the situation that we were in with Torchies was like the perfect, most ideal kind of way to go about things for guys like us, right? Because the client was really only concerned with the end product and it being cool, right? And he gave us all the freedom to run with things and kind of explore our own ideas and do stuff without a lot of accountability in the process, right? I mean, there was always budgets and things like that, but he wasn't micromanaging how we were going about things or what we were doing, right? He just trusted that at the end of the day, we were going to make some cool shit.
Yeah.
And, we were talking about it, like looking back at it now, like it was perfect, when we were in it, I was always just so worried about making sure we got everything done. I don't think I completely appreciated like how awesome it was, right? But now looking back at it, I'm like, damn, I wish we were still just full bore.
Yeah.
Doing like cool shit all the time.
Like you had that, then you had the pitch. Hopefully that was real similar.
Oh yeah, the pitch was awesome.
Now you can recognize those opportunities sooner.
Yeah, agreed.
Right? It's these stepping stones that allow you to find them more often. And you can imagine the people, like I know when I'm sitting in a room and I think this is going to be a good team.
Yeah. Agreed. So, how do you, and it's a discipline to be able to get into that, like choose to look for those situations and get into those and weed out the other ones. Because the him you're talking about, I'm hoping we're going to get him on here to have a conversation. Yeah. Because that'll be pretty interesting. Won't mention it yet until we get that locked in. But you look at the whole overall Torchies experience, and I wonder, the parameters we were given were go make it cool, go build cool shit, go do something significant from a design standpoint, and we were given the autonomy and the leeway to go do it right. I mean, that was the one thing that I'd never experienced before when we got into it. It was the protocol or the mandate was go build cool shit and go do it right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Which is super rare.
Very rare. And you look at the result of that, right? The concept was extremely successful.
Yeah.
So, again, not to get so naive to say, well, the design and the construction aspect of those stores contributed to all the success. Right? I know that's not. It was a
plays
great
a big part in it, though.
It plays a big part in it. But there was great food, there was great the environment, the brand, all that kind of stuff. I think it was a combination. But you look at it and like, well, how much did that really affect the overall? You had a group of people that loved what they did, and were on the same mission. We're trying to create this really cool experience. Like, how much did that really? It obviously affected the success. Right.
You can compare that to the pitch.
That's what I was just going to say.
When we were approached by the pitch, it wasn't, hey, we want this trophy project that looks like this. It was never that. We didn't know what it was going to be. And it was based on an experience and an event. And you could say Torchies was very similar. Yeah. Right? You just wanted to build cool shit. Yeah. And it to be good. Well, we wanted the same thing. We had an experience in mind that we wanted to create, and we just formed boxes, putting it in simplest forms. We formed boxes, and the experience was in between. Yeah. Right. And so
Well, and there was something, we were on this, there was a mission. It was tied to this new, Austin FC had that element to it. That was new to town. That was a great experience, right? We knew kind of what this project was going to mean for that area and for, you know what I mean? So like we were heading towards this positive promised land.
Yeah.
And we were all on the same mission to get there versus other projects where you're trying to avoid the fucking hammer at the end.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, sure.
And so it's like totally different dynamics. But again, not to be so naive to think that we can always live in that beautiful world of like, man, we're all, there's camaraderie, but I think we can search more of that out. And I think we can choose to work with people that get that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
My goal is to have that.
Yeah.
All
the time?
All the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like it.
Do you
That's
turn project away specifically if you just don't like the vibe from an initial meeting, or you just, you know?
Yeah.
I do too.
I mean, there are times like the market is down. There are times when we will take work that's not that, but the
You got bills
intent
to pay,
of
right?
where
I mean,
we're
at the end of the
going
day too,
is,
Yeah.
is to turn that stuff down. So we have more of like, if you don't turn it down and if you allow yourself to accept everything just because of the dollar, then it's going to take you away from the prize.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. You're going to be exhausted from this thing you don't want. and then you're going to be tired and maybe you don't see the other opportunity that you do want.
Boy, that was a tough lesson for me. And I think just in the past 18 months, or 2 years, we've fired kind of 3 clients. Now,
Yeah.
one of them I talked to you about,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to name the names, but goddamn, did I feel good after that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was like there was one relationship that we were getting in that early on is like, oh man, this is going to be a big deal. Like this will be great. And then, 10 conversations in with our client, I'm like, I know what this is going to look like 6 months down the line. And this is not going to be good.
Yeah.
And this is the one I talked to you about early on. And it was tough, but when we cut ties, and man, I felt so good.
Yeah.
And then we had the other big one was we were making a lot of money with them. Like we were making a lot of money with them. And we rode probably 6 months longer with that relationship than we should have, strictly because we were,
Sure.
And it's funny, we got to the point where we're like, okay, we just can't go any further with this client. And we had a team meeting and we're like, hey, I think we're gonna cut ties. And everybody was like, oh, thank God.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
You're like, shit,
When it drags everything down, right? You just get one little, like, just that one thing that everybody's going to dread every day, right? And it just like wrecks morale and just, it's a beating, right? Like you don't want to wake up because at some point you're going to have that one phone call that just fucking sucks.
Yeah.
You don't want to deal with it even.
You're not going to deliver your best service, because you're in the thick of it or you're doing something you don't want to do. I mean, we all run businesses. We have to have we have to have revenue, positive revenue, or else we're not going to be here. And so that could mean that we have to offer services to particular areas that are not that. But, the end goal is to find joy in work and why sacrifice when you don't have to.
Yeah.
If you can, right?
If you can.
And, I think for me, I think marketing has always been the thing that I've done the worst job at, right?
Sure.
I never really have is the problem. I don't really have a legit website. I don't do any marketing. In the very beginning, I used to put out like Google AdWords and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I get 1,000 phone calls a day, and you're weeding through those. You get like maybe
That's
one person.
You're big sexy.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe, right?
You're like, man,
I
this is not really the service.
The full, frontal pictures like that. I didn't know.
Well, listen, this is going to blow up, right? And we've got your logo right here, Make House Design and Fabrication. So
what I was going to say is what I've learned over the years is I kind of like that I don't advertise in any way, right? Because I know if somebody calls me,
What's word of mouth? Yeah.
yeah, like if somebody is like, hey, I saw this thing that you built in this restaurant and like took me forever to figure out how to get a hold of you, but I want you to do this. I know they're serious, right? I know it's somebody
absolutely
that it's going to be probably cool to work with, or they're serious about what they really want. And it's not just like, hey, how much is it going to cost to build this thing? it sort of weeds all that out by itself, which is good and bad, right? Because when we're busy, it's great.
Yeah.
When we're not busy, then I don't have an apparatus for like
Yeah,
getting
sure.
work in when we just need something to pay the bills this month, you know? So it's kind of it's a good and a bad thing, but
Yeah.
I feel like it helps us get good work that we like, you know? And then like when we started with Torchies, right, I was just me in a garage making stuff, right? So like we built the business up as Torchies was building up, and they kept us so busy, right, that having work wasn't an issue at the moment, right? It was like, holy shit, how are we going to keep up with this? And just constantly trying to figure out, you know, new machines, new people, how many people we're going to need this month, you know, and it's just the ebb and flow of it is always hard, but but I like it, right? We're in a comfortable size now where it's easier to maintain.
I think as long as you're doing the right thing, it's going to work out. You know, there's, you know, I've always, I journal a lot, you know, and we moved to this new house, and I was pulling out boxes and books, and then I found the box with all my journals, and you know, stuff that I was writing back in like 2000, 2001, and you know, 2003 when my first business was really starting to take off, and you know, I was thinking about a lot of the same stuff I think about today. And it was these areas of like, holy shit, I got to go sell some work because it's not going to, you know, how the hell are we going to survive another, you know, 6 months? And looking back now, it's like, well, we always just kept growing. It just, you know what I mean? And I think a lot of that's because, you know, we always wanted to do the right thing. Yeah. If you do the right thing and you work hard, it's gonna happen, you know. And then there's levers you can pull to make things go faster and sell more and do all that. But I found that if you do that without some authenticity, it's if you do it for growth's sake, then you can get in trouble a little bit. You know, you can get out over your skis. But
well, you could say that I was listening to something the other day, but you could say that the right thing is the why. Right, is the why of your business. Yeah. And you may or may not know what the why is, but if you look back in your journals and you find what that common thread is, that's probably the thing that you gravitate towards. And it could be a project, it could be people, it could be money, it could be whatever. Yeah. But that's why you've found growth or success.
Early on, I was chasing revenue early on. We were chasing, it was an ego thing, right? But the growing revenue for revenue's sake was tempered and balanced with the fact that we wanted to do the right thing on the project. Like we were going to finish we got into a lot of bad projects early on because I was not very discerning. I would take anything, but we always finished a project. Yeah. You know, we didn't cut corners. We didn't try to cheat anybody. We did the right thing. And so we kept getting work. Yeah. You know, because of that. But
and that is the hard part too, right? Because I'll get calls from GCs that I've never worked with before, and the project seems really cool, but my inclination is to always say no, just because I'm worried about getting paid. Yeah, I don't trust any of these people, right? I mean, you know, I've gotten in a couple bad situations in the onset where we didn't get paid for 6-8 months, right? And we don't have the revenue to float stuff for that long, right? So even when I got involved with Torchies with you, right, at first I was just kind of like, I don't know. And then I ran with the first one, and then, you know, it seemed great, so we just went with it. But that's always my first thought, like, you know, just, are they going to pay me? Yeah. Now we don't do anything without a deposit now. Yeah, 50% deposit before I will like pick up a pencil, you know, because at least we know I got the costs covered at that point. Hopefully, anyway. Yeah. It's hard.
It's definitely an interesting time in the industry right now, you know, and again, kind of having the ability to look back over 20 years now doing this. I'm sure you're the same way. It's interesting right now in all different aspects. You know, it's different. It's in some ways it's better. In some ways it's odd, you know, in terms of just kind of labor right now, and you know, not to get into the whole generational conversation, but the new generation coming up doesn't want to get into the trades. They don't. You know, I'll say it. They don't have that same work ethic mostly. Yeah.
But I think it's the skills too. The amount of skilled labor force that's out there is dwindling, right? I see diminishing. We'll go on to job sites, and some of the stuff that I see that, you know, people are putting up, I'm just like, are you serious? Like, how does that fly? You know, like walls are inches out of square and just, you know, like basic things that are just a skill set you would think you would have
Yeah.
if this is your job.
I'll tell you
know,
what's surprising. You know, we've been in the hiring mode the last 6 months, and it's amazing how many people don't call back. They don't show up to
Oh, yeah.
interviews.
Yeah.
They don't show up to face interviews.
Yeah.
You know, you have a good meeting with them. You never hear from them again. You know, and I'd like to think now that we're a little more savvy with how we screen people and choose who to talk to. And it's still like, man, people they're not as accountable as I remember people being 10, 15 years ago. But
you think it's because people have more options now? Like I was thinking about that. It's always been hard for us to find like skilled fabricators, you know. And early on, I did more woodworking, and now we mostly do primarily metal. But you know, it seems like maybe because of social media or whatever it is, that it's easier for people to start their own little small. I like making desks or whatever it is that they're making, right? And they can make enough of that and get enough sales to survive. So maybe I think that maybe more people are doing their own thing individually instead of seeking out like a job with somebody like me, right? Because we have a really hard time. Like we can find welders all day, but somebody that can actually like put something together, look at a set of plans and understand what it's supposed to be.
I think
it's impossible.
It's a common problem no matter what industry, because and it could be that we're looking for a very specific person that either gives a shit or that can do a particular skill or that has a work ethic or just will show up, right? And believe in what you're doing. And that seems very difficult.
I think now the generations coming up that are entering into the workforce that, I mean, they grew up with the internet, with social media, with all that, where we kind of matured and came along before that happened now, right? So I think there's an attention component to it. There's a you know, people have a different focus nowadays. There's more of a like, I want things now, you know, everything's visual. Like, you know, I think a lot of it you have to attribute to the way the world's changed in the last 15, 20 years. But, you know, in terms of, you know, what I was talking about is people's own accountability, you know, and not that I'm a saint by any means, but man, if I tell you I'm going to be somewhere, dude, I'm going to fucking do everything I can to be there on time. You know, the biggest thing I fight with my wife about is leaving the house on time.
Yeah.
That way, because I mean, it's almost an OCD for me where it's like I feel weird if I think that I'm going to be late somewhere.
Yeah, I know.
And if I tell you I'm going to meet you somewhere, like I don't even understand the option of not trying to do everything I can do to be there if I make that commitment to you, especially if it's a personal commitment. But
if you know it's not going to happen, you'll call the person in time just to give them fair warning.
If something happens,
heads up, not 10 minutes before, like, hey, I'm not going to make it. Like
you're going to get a call, you're going to get a text message, you're going to get an email. Yeah. But now it's like, I mean, and you and I've talked about this. It's like, man, people lately are just don't give a shit. Like they just.
And like blatantly, like don't even care to pretend like they give a shit anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And I don't know. That's
it's a phenomenon.
I don't know what that is, but yeah.
Matt, what are you working on these days that grabs your interest?
That grabs my interest. Man, right
school
now, honestly,
project?
No, school project not. Well, yeah, we did that for my daughter's high school theater. That was a beating, right?
Talk about what you do. I know we brought you on and we really didn't dig into what Make House does or what, you know, but what are you passionate about? Like, what do you guys do?
So we primarily make architectural metal products, you know, and for the last 15 years, it's been primarily for the restaurant industry, which was Torchy's Tacos. You know, I mean, they consumed everything about our life since about 2010. You know, and we've picked up lots of work here and there. And, you know, when we were at the height of that and we were just blowing and going with all the Torchies, I would always try to take on when I first stopped working in architecture, right? I was making architectural models for a while. And then like 2008, when the world fell apart, you know, I mean, that just came to a screeching halt. And I was just, you know, what am I going to do just to, you know, keep the lights on, right? But I had a laser cutter and a CNC router. So I started going around to anybody that I could find, like cabinet shops, sign shops, just saying like, hey, I could cut parts. And I ended up working with a direct marketing guy that did lots of like liquor displays, and they were ordering like 5,000 Crown Royal thrones from China and would get them
I
here
can
and
do
then
that.
realize, oh
Yeah.
crap, we need 200 more, right? So then I was the guy making the extra 10.
That's
That was
cool.
a beating. I mean,
Yeah.
same, it kept us alive for a while,
Sure.
but it was a beating. But, I always have been really interested in product design.
Yeah.
I think at the time, if I would have known when I went to architectural school that product design was even a thing, I probably would have gone to a product design school. Yeah. I really like making furniture. I've gotten into blacksmithing. I really like making knives and stuff like that. But lots of those things that really pique my interest are more of like a smaller handcrafted thing, right? It's not something that we can make in big batches or mass produce, But work-wise, I like the freedom and the autonomy to be able to kind of put my own spin on everything and get into it, and I've been building a house, or I've been adding on and renovating a house for like 3 years now. My wife has been
I want to see this house.
been patiently
I've
waiting,
heard
right?
about it.
We're living in a little bitty rent house, and it got all screwy, right? Because we started right when COVID happened,
Yeah.
and we shut it down, and then we've been back at it. But so far I've done everything myself. My wife and I put up the metal frame for the addition. I had the concrete poured, and just stuff like that really kind of gets me. It's all the little details and working out all the little nuances of how everything's going to come together. Like I really like all of that stuff, It's that initial problem solving, right? It's figuring it out and implementing it, and then once I know that it's going to work, I kind of check out. Right, I'm really good to about that 90%, and then that last 10% is always a struggle for me to push it across the finish line and want to get it done, because I'm already like, well, what's the next thing?
Yeah.
I'm really good at starting. It's just that last little bit, which helps, so now that we have a big enough team,
Yeah.
right, then
Sure.
I get it to the point where I'm happy with it, and then I let them take it the rest of the way, and then just make sure that it's what I want at the end of the day, which is fun.
Are you looking to grow your team? Are you happy where you're at, or what about that?
Yes and no. I kind of like the size of it now. At the height of it, I think we had like 14 employees, which is not big by any stretch of the imagination. But for what we do, everything's hands-on, and, I'm pretty anal, right? So I want to touch and be in control of every aspect of it, right? And that's impossible. I basically was just to a point where I was babysitting everybody, but I wasn't actually doing anything, right? And I like physically making things, right? Like I didn't start the business because I wanted to run a business. I started the business because I wanted to make stuff, And that's been a hard part for me, because I think if I was more oriented towards the business side of things, we could be huge, right? We turned down lots of work. That doesn't do anything for me personally. So I have zero aspirations to grow some gigantic business that then what am I going to do with it, right? Like, in a perfect world, it would just be me in a shop making stuff that makes me happy every day, if I can make enough money doing that, And I tried for a while with Torchies. I mean, I fought it for the first probably 18 months, 2 years, right? I mean, I was doing all of it by myself for the most part, right? But I mean, I wasn't sleeping. I just came like, real close to just, I knew like if we're going to continue, right, I have to just give in and hire some help and not be so controlling about everything, and trust that people are going to do, what I want them to do or need them to do. And it's been hard. We've had lots of fabricators come and go. We've got 2 guys that have been with us. One's almost 10 years now, right? And one's 8, and they're both awesome, right? And they get the job done. And, and then Michael helps run the business, right? So all of that's great, right? But in a perfect world, I would like it to be bigger. Just, I feel like we're teetering on the edge where we're just big enough where we have a certain amount of money that we have to bring in every month.
Yeah.
That's substantial enough that like we have to have a pretty good flow of work, right? If we were a little smaller, we could float longer between big projects, right? But we're just right on the cusp where I think we either need to get a little bit bigger or I need to step it back and get a little bit smaller, right? And
I'm always interested in that brain, because you can put it in 2 halves. Those that are content with having a small shop, and small as numbers are not important really. It's just it's this thing that you reach a threshold and it's uncomfortable, or you want to maintain
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
right? And then there's those that continuously or that want to push to the opposite side of that. And how you grow or whatever it is, whatever business, like there's this thing, there's this mechanism that it's kind of interesting to me in a way, because I'm small, we're still small, as an office, but the aspiration is to get to a point, and again, it's not numbers, but it's this process that it allows us to do as an office that will allow us to have like I don't know this realm of decision makers, right? That and mentoring and all this other stuff that I think will allow us to do better. But it does mean growth.
Right.
It means all these other things where I've never been really particularly interested in staying two people, like, because it doesn't give me what I want to get.
Right.
Yeah.
When I think too, it's access to projects, right? Like you have to be a certain size to do certain scope of work, and I'll be content, and then I'll get on Instagram and see some like really cool shit, and I'm like, damn, I want to do something like that. But the companies that are doing that are huge,
Sure.
and it's I guess it all boils down to ego, right? I'll see stuff and I'm like, I could have done that, but definitely not by myself, not with the size of people, and just it's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, from an ego standpoint, I drive around and I see these big projects with tower cranes, and I'm like, that's the next level.
Yeah.
We're a ways away from that, obviously, but
Maybe not.
I don't know. What I hear you saying, I think is kind of what I think all three of us, if I'm going to jump out there and say it, is like, we're trying to build a machine that we can do other things with, right? And you can attract other projects, but you've got that machine now that you can kind of step back a little bit,
Yeah.
and then you can work on it, and you can cultivate it instead of having to be in it and be in constant survival mode.
Yeah.
You want to be out and have some optionality of like, okay, I know that now I can be more intentional with the projects I go and grab.
Yeah.
The ones that are going to make more sense.
Yeah.
Versus being in survival mode, right? Because that's what we've been real fortunate over the last couple of years to have a steady stream of work. But we watch and like, okay, well, we got to put a little more foot on the gas a little bit to go get things stacked up for 6, 8, 12 months down the line. But trying not to fall into that trap of like just taking whatever you can take, or whatever you can get, and then not just growing for growth's sake.
Yeah.
That's
It's
a
not
major
good.
lesson that I learned. It's like doing it right, and then people first. Like we're trying to grow people first, then project.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So we can deliver the results we
Yeah,
need to deliver.
absolutely.
But it's
That's what I figured out too. Like I always used to say or think like I like if you open up a project and you see something in there and you're like, shit, who's gonna make that? Like that's the kind of stuff that I want, right? I want that like super intense, really intellectually challenging. How are we gonna figure out how to put this together? That's what for me gets everything flowing.
Yeah.
But those are so time consuming, hands on, I can't do all of that myself kind of deal. But I was always super against like any kind of production work where it was a rinse and repeat. But now I embrace those.
Yeah.
Because if it's a rinse and repeat and I've got 6 guys over here cranking out hundreds of something that's paying the bills, and then I can like, oh, cool, this thing that just popped up, I can spend as much time as I want on that and not feel like, okay, every second has to be accounted for. Am I getting paid to do this right now? Really, right? Because when you get into those super intense creative projects, I mean, the amount of time that goes into that, if I really boil that down to what we're charging versus the amount of time, sometimes it's not worth it. It's worth it for me on a personal level, but it's not worth it financially. And that's what I figured out is I want to get the machine of the shop just humming, making stuff. Just so the money is flowing, and then that will hopefully free me up to do some of these things that are more satisfying on a personal level, right? Which is hard, but we get there too. And some of those, right, then you get into the same thing. Like these bigger shops that are bidding or going after these same kind of production projects that they can make it half for what we can make it for just because
Yeah.
they're more efficient or bigger,
Yeah.
you know, and then
Yeah.
you're nickel and dime, you know, so just
Yeah.
finding the vein for that too is hard.
Yeah.
I've always kind of wanted to try to start like a product line where we're making something,
Sure.
you know, that still check some of those boxes for me personally, but is also, you know, like we're just making them and cranking them out, you know, but then that gets into marketing and sales and
Yeah.
again, right, that's really not.
That's where Big Sexy comes out.
That doesn't do anything for me though, right? The marketing and like sales
That's when you
aspect
partner
of
with
it,
somebody.
well, I know,
Yeah.
that's
You know,
what I
you-
need to,
You
right?
bring somebody in that does that.
That's
for you.
right.
In a perfect
That's what we
world,
had to
that's
do.
what I need
I'm
to.
not particularly great at it, you know, in an open crowd. Like I'm one-on-one.
Yeah.
I'm all right
Yes, sir.
one-on-one, but
Yeah.
not in a big open room.
Yeah, same. I usually clam up if it's a big crowd. If it's like a forced social situation, I usually
I'm gonna
don't
find a
say very
corner.
much. Yeah, that's how I am too.
Well,
I think
guys,
that goes back to like most architecture creative people that I've ever known. They're introverted, right? Like they'll be some of the nicest, just softest people. They're great
Yeah.
to talk to, but you got to like pry it out of them.
Yeah,
you know? There's
for
not
sure.
a whole lot of big personalities, and usually those are the ones that stand out, right? Like I remember when the firm I worked at was huge. And it was a sea of people that didn't say anything, and there'd be two guys that were loud and boisterous, right? And they were running the show just because
Yeah, they
nobody
could.
was stopping them, you know?
yeah.
That's hard.
Big Sexy.
Big Sexy.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, dude, I had fun.